Most people grow up believing that reaching $1 million in retirement savings is simply a natural milestone of adult life, something that automatically happens if you just work hard, stay employed, pay your bills on time, and avoid major financial disasters. It's almost treated like a rite of passage. You get a career, maybe raise a family, you turn 50, and somewhere out there, a retirement account slowly fills itself until eventually it hits that magical 7-figure mark. But the shocking reality is that this image couldn't be further from the truth. The percentage of Americans who actually manage to accumulate $1 million specifically for retirement is so tiny that most people, when they hear the real number, assume it must be wrong. And honestly, it would be comforting if it were wrong. But it isn't. The truth is uncomfortable. It's hidden behind averages that distort the picture. And it hits much harder when you realize that decades of hard work don't translate into financial security the way people think they do. When you look at real data instead of the fantasy, the first thing that hits you is how early the gap appears. People in their 20s obviously don't have $1 million, but by the time they reach their 30s, you might expect to see some progress. Yet the number of 30-year-olds with anywhere near that amount in retirement accounts isn't just low, it's statistically invisible. Almost zero. Not low, zero. And even in the 40s, when salaries are higher and people are supposedly in their career prime, the proportion of individuals with $1 million saved for retirement is still almost non-existent. Maybe 1%, maybe 2%. And those people usually aren't average workers. They're outliers, people in high-paying industries, or individuals who received inheritances or made large windfalls. For the typical American worker, the story is entirely different. By the time people hit age 50, the age when society says you should be comfortable, where you would imagine the $1 million goal to finally come into focus, the numbers remain shockingly small. Only about 2 or 3% of middle-class Americans reach $1 million in retirement savings by age 50. And when I say middle class, I'm talking about regular people who go to work every day, pay rent or a mortgage, raise kids, deal with taxes, insurance, and groceries that somehow get more expensive every single year. These are normal workers doing everything you're supposed to do, and yet the system simply does not reward them with the security that previous generations once considered normal. Things improve only slightly when you look at those approaching retirement, ages 55 to 64. This is the age group that theoretically should be the closest to the $1 million mark. But even here, the truth is far from encouraging. Maybe 10% of Americans in this age group have $1 million saved. But once again, that number includes people who sold businesses, high-income professionals, people with massive employer pensions, and individuals whose wealth comes from sources the average person does not have. If you strip those out and focus specifically on the regular working American, the teacher, the nurse, the retail manager, the construction worker, the office employee, the percentage drops back down to around 3%. That means that 97% of ordinary Americans will never reach the $1 million mark for retirement. So what do most people retire with? This is where the picture becomes truly alarming. The median retirement savings for Americans approaching retirement isn't $1 million or even $500,000. It's around $150,000. That's it, $150,000 to cover a retirement that might last 20, 25, or even 30 years. If you think about it, that's like expecting a toddler's backpack to hold enough supplies for an expedition across the desert. It's simply not built for that. And yet, this is exactly the situation millions of people are heading into. Why does this happen? Why does a full lifetime of working not translate into a secure retirement? The short answer is that the modern financial system simply does not function the way the old one did. Decades ago, pensions were common, housing was affordable, career paths were stable, and cost of living didn't rise at the insane pace we see today. People could work at one company for 30 years, retire with a guaranteed income, and live comfortably. But pensions are practically extinct for the average worker. Homes that once cost 3 times a yearly salary now cost 8 to 12 times more. Healthcare is more expensive. Education is more expensive. Basic food is more expensive. Meanwhile, wages haven't kept up. So while older generations imagine the modern worker has the same opportunities they did, the reality is that the entire economic landscape has tilted against the average person. Another major factor is timing. Most people don't start saving seriously until their 30s or 40s. because before that, they're drowning in student loans, rising rents, childcare, car repairs, credit card debt, and all the financial surprises life throws at them. And once you hit your mid-30s or 40s, the math becomes brutal. To reach $1 million starting at age 40, you would need to invest between $1,200 and $1,500 every month, consistently for 25 years. That assumes stable income, no interruptions, and a decent rate of return. But most people are still paying off debts in their 40s, or supporting kids, or helping aging parents, or trying to keep up with rising expenses. They're not exactly sitting on an extra $1,500 a month. And even if they could save that much, very few have the financial knowledge or discipline to invest at that level for decades. Then there's human behavior. People underestimate how much they actually need. They procrastinate. They assume they have more time than they do, and they assume their future selves will somehow be more responsible than their present selves. Many don't invest because the stock market feels intimidating. Others don't invest because they believe retirement is something far away, something they'll think about later, and later quietly becomes too late. Even those who do save and invest often fall behind because they start late, invest too conservatively, or withdraw money early for emergencies. And let's be honest, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, emergencies aren't rare. They're constant. The car breaks down, the fridge dies, someone gets sick, rent goes up, a job is lost, inflation hits harder than expected. Life doesn't pause just because you're trying to build a retirement portfolio. But here's the most important part of this entire conversation. Even though $1 million sounds like an intimidating, almost unreachable number for most Americans, it is not necessarily an indicator of wealth. In many cases, it's the minimum needed to avoid struggling in retirement. $1 million doesn't give you a luxurious life. It simply gives you breathing room. It gives you the ability to not worry about groceries, medication, or whether you'll have to work until you physically can't. And this is why the reality is so concerning. If most people aren't even close to reaching this number, then most people are heading toward a retirement filled with stress, compromises, and financial insecurity. And if governments and companies aren't stepping in the way they used to, then individuals are left to figure out this impossible puzzle on their own. But there is a silver lining. Even though the system is flawed, and even though the vast majority will never hit 1 million, individuals who learn early, invest consistently, and stay disciplined absolutely can reach it, even with an average income. The key is starting as early as possible. A person investing $300 to $400 a month in their 20s has a dramatically higher chance of reaching 1 million than someone trying to invest $1,200 in their 40s. Time is the ultimate multiplier. Compounding is the only realistic way for ordinary people to reach extraordinary financial goals. And this brings us to the real question, not who has 1 million, because the answer is almost no one, but who can get there. The answer is anyone who understands the system, respects the math, and starts early enough to let compounding do the heavy lifting. The $1 million dream isn't dead, it's just misunderstood. It's not something you stumble into by accident, it's something you build with intention. Most people don't have $1 million for retirement because they were never taught how to get there. They never learned that a small amount invested early beats a large amount invested late. They never learned that investing isn't gambling. They never learned that time in the market always wins over timing the market. They never learned that waiting until you make more money is one of the most expensive decisions you can make. And they never learned that financial security isn't granted, it's built. The uncomfortable truth is that most Americans will retire far poorer than they expected. But the empowering truth is that no matter where you start, you have more control than you think. The earlier you begin, the better your chances. $1 million isn't a symbol of being rich, it's a symbol of being prepared. And while few people reach it today, far more could reach it tomorrow if they decide to start now instead of waiting for a future that won't magically fix itself.